Good evening, everyone. It's the old man here from the Geekcast, joined by special guest Anu Vlad. Say hello to our viewers, Anu.
Hello, plebs.
Tonight, we're going to be talking about feminism and entertainment and whether or not it's actual progress, it's accomplishing a good thing, or if it's just vandalism. And the reason I bring this up is because over the last few years, there have been a bunch of attempts to kind of rebrand popular franchises with feminist themes. You look at things like Baldur's Gate, for example, Baldur's Gate Deluxe Edition, or uh, comic books. It's been a big thing, changing, kind of retconning a lot of characters to have, like social justice-y themes, whether it be, like a gay character, a trans character, or just straight up replacing them with females. Thor is a good example of that. Um, Star Trek, the new Star Trek series, which we've already covered on this channel, and let our distaste for it be known. Things like that. So the question we're trying to answer tonight is: are things like this good, or are they bad? And if they're good, are we in the Geekcast just too stupid to figure it out? Or if they are bad, why does everybody else think they're good? What do you think, man?
Um, I think that it's a bit of a. Okay, I don't think it's either vandalism or the opposite. A good thing, progress. Because it really depends on what we're talking about, actually. So if we're talking about like feminism, like the overall idea, um, uh, taking complete control of a mega corporation and utilizing that and its products to spill out all that as propaganda or whatever, then I would consider that still pretty much a form of art. This propaganda art. I wouldn't necessarily say vandalism on art itself. However, you could make the argument that it's propaganda. However, I would also say, again, it's really only problem. Like, I don't see an issue with having, like, let's say a character, a comic book, say Wonder Woman, for instance, like one character, one comic book series, and it's a feminist thing, and it's just talking about it. I don't have anything against feminists being able to say what they want, freedom of speech, etc., etc. But I feel like there could be argued that there is a line between free speech and propaganda. And I would say that if it is at all vandalism, that it would be a vandalism of the freedom of speech opposed to the vandalism of art itself.
I think you raise a good point with like Wonder Woman, for example. Like, I don't think anybody would have bat an eye if Wonder Woman either quietly or overtly drifted into the realms of, if not, social justice altogether, then at least feminism, right? I mean, it's a very feminist character, right? A strong female character. She don't need no man to come save her. She is the
Right.
main figure.
Well, I think that if I recall correctly, she was originally a second wave feminist. I believe during the 60s or 70s. Maybe I have to look. I have a child background screaming and stuff.
Sorry,
Hey,
you should hear some of
silent.
my regular streams.
What?
I said you should hear some of my regular streams. The kids are. I always have background noise.
Um. By the way, just on a side note, some people wanted to see this actual stream, but not participate in it. Do you think you could send me a link to the actual stream? I can't find your channel for some
Yes,
odd
indeed.
reason. I don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah, I'll hang on just a sec. I'll Send it to you.
Or actually, you could send it to me in a tweet, and I'll retweet it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, so we're a little bit of technical stuff here. I'm posting an announcement on Twitter. And I'm tagging my panelist here. There you go. I posted the watch link on Twitter. So if any of you follow me, this uninformed 313 on Twitter, I just posted that. Or I just posted the YouTube video on Twitter, so you can go ahead and jump into the live stream comment section. I know I'm in there. So yeah, I will definitely be monitoring that stream and participating. But anywho, yeah, we were talking Wonder Woman, right? And yeah, we're not really surprised that, you know, like if a title like hers goes feminist, right?
Right.
Because that's kind of the point. And like you said, I'm not opposed to, you know, feminism having a voice per se. What I am opposed to are people hijacking pre-existing properties and inserting their agenda into them when that particular property didn't really have that kind of agenda.
Well, I mean, whether or not Wonder Woman anyway had a second wave feminist thing, it definitely didn't have a modern feminist shtick. So
Yeah,
until recently, so that's absolutely correct. Yeah,
you definitely didn't have Wonder Woman saying something like, you know, "Die, cis scum."
right. or you know, having it actually it would be really funny if she ended up having a beta male, the Wonder Man,
That would
a Wonder
actually,
Boy.
that would be kind of funny.
But I mean, or no, just screw that. The Soy Boy.
That would be a perfect feminist sidekick.
Exactly. But yeah, no, but I agree with you. Like if they had taken X-Men and then turned like Xavier X into a male feminist, and then just like he slowly indoctrinated all the X-Men and all of them are now feminists. And like the only thing they ever fought against at that point were people whom into feminists, and it just became like a giant metaphor for feminism versus the world. I mean, yeah, like, and they did that with every other intellectual property. Yeah, I can see how you would say that's vandalism on pre-existing art, I guess. Yeah, it'd be like me going to the Mona Lisa and spraying a Hitler mustache on her face.
Right. Right. Or yeah, it would be something to that effect. I don't know if you've watched the Star Trek, the new Star Trek series at all, or if you're into Star Trek at all.
Uh,
Um,
yeah, I'm scared too.
we live streamed the pilot on this channel, as a matter of fact, and one of the issues that we had with it was that they didn't seem to get Star Trek, if that makes sense. Like they seem to be missing the point of they didn't understand what made Star Trek Star Trek.
You mean like the spirit of it?
Yeah. So we were kind of left with I don't know how to describe it, but it wasn't very good at all.
Well, you do know the backstory, like as in like the production backstory of that, right?
Yeah.
Like what happened, the controversy and all that.
But why don't you go ahead and fill in the audience?
Oh, if I remember this correctly, originally the captain was supposed to be male, and he was supposed to have a female underling, which is what is currently now the female head of the show. And then they decided to make the lead character female because they felt it was, what's the word I'm looking for here? Misogynist. Sorry, I'm having trouble looking for the buzzword sometimes. And yeah, that he it was a little too misogynist and or whatever. And I think she was also a minority race, so I think that had another element to it. And so they ended up just switching up to. I think she's a black female, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, making her the lead instead because it's more politically correct.
Well, the part that annoyed me about all that and the marketing for all that is they were saying that she was the first black lead character, or the first black lead character in Star Trek. And I'm thinking, have you watched Deep Space Nine? Like even a single episode of Deep Space Nine?
Yeah, I haven't actually, no. So, but yeah, I know where you're getting at.
Yeah, I mean Cisco, or then you take Voyager, right? Captain Catherine Janeway. Oh,
yeah.
Granted, she had the voice of a 50-year-old woman who's been smoking cigarettes her whole life, but I mean, she was a chick, dude. What more do you want?
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I mean, also, if you just went all the way back to the original Star Trek, those women weren't helpless. They weren't damsels in distress, well, most of them anyway.
No, yeah, you're right. You're right about that.
And then, if I remember correctly, didn't Kirk kiss the black woman in that show, and that caused some major controversy?
Major controversy.
Star Trek has always been a bit on the progressive side, but never to the point of oppressively progressive.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between the progressivism that like something like Star Trek would have presented and what's happening now. Because Star Trek always kind of explored its progressive issues, right? And it tried to play fair on both sides. And I don't think that's something that the current iteration does, or any other version would do. Like take the female. Well, I mean, we can go and look at the current one, right? I mean, they don't take an opportunity to say, well, it doesn't feel like it examines itself in any way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because Star Trek, and I do want to stress this one thing. I am really just not a big fan of any Star Trek show that goes beyond Captain Kirk era. So, I'm not even that old. It's just that I preferred it. But I think it is still nonetheless interesting to go that far back in time and see how it relates to today. And one of the major reasons I say that is because you said you actually made a good point about questioning itself. Well, the original show of Star Trek, it's like pretty much the main shtick it had was the main characters were constantly being challenged, even on a social level at all times. Like Kirk, the whole thing about Kirk, really, if you think about the whole original show and the movies that take place in the same universe with Kirk and all that in it, I mean, really, if you watch the whole thing and really think about it, it's just about how Kirk turns human. It's just about his humanity and how he starts off as this really cocky, arrogant bastard, and then by the end of it is actually no longer cocky. He gets it. He's become a better person.
In fact,
as a result of all of it.
My favorite Star Trek movie is Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, where Kirk takes a good hard look at himself and his prejudices and realizes that he's made a mess of things because he was old and inflexible and prejudiced.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just legitimately one of the things about the show that just everybody misses. And so now, and I'm just going to guess here. I'm just going to guess, and I'm going to make the assumption that the new Star Trek show is more interested in flashy special effects.
That is what it seemed to be about. And they had that god-awful lens flare from the J.J. Abrams films.
God damn it. I mean, I'm not a big... I like lens flare, but when it actually has like story importance, not just everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, it's just freaking Abrams. I was afraid that was going to creep into Star Wars so much. Anyway, but yeah. But it's one of those, like, to me, I haven't seen any of it. I should probably watch the premiere of it so I'm better informed. But the thing is, from what all I can tell from a lot of these shows, like Stargate did it too. They tried to bring back the old SG1 of Stargate, and then they focused on all this flashy special effects, and everything else just fell by the wayside. Realistically, I know there's a lot of superficial, like, kids out there and all of that are interested in just that kind of thing. But I mean, like, the only reason they continue to be interested in it is because nobody's challenging them with actual, like, important, like, philosophical whatever, like any important issues, nothing. Like, they're just being fed this crap. I mean, can you imagine for a moment what it would have been like to watch a Star Trek movie made by Michael Bay?
God. That hurts my soul to think of it.
Yeah. I cannot stand Michael Bay as a director. Now, I respect him to a point. He has done a few innovative things, sure, which I honestly would argue most likely came as a result of a pure accident, because of his directing style. However, as incorrect as I may be there or may not be, one thing that I can't respect about him is that he intentionally makes movies for children and has actually bragged about it. Like, and it's like at a certain point, I respect him for being so honest and blunt as to actually say that. Whereas on the other side of the coin, I'm like, yeah, but people stupid.
Right. Yeah.
Like, even my father, man, he's like 50 something. I think he's like 55 or whatever. Okay. Even he has this dumb mindset most of the time where he just wants to watch movies that have senseless violence in it for no reason, which are basically pornos without the sex. It's like gun porn. Like, I'm not a big anti-gun nut. I'm not against violence in movies at all. It's just grew up and I wanted more than just gunfire, and my father, for the most part, prefers that, like, that casual movie experience. You or I or a lot of other nerds aren't really what you would call casual moviegoers.
That's true. And I think that's the one thing that bothers me and makes me wonder so much about the vandalization thing is, like, the message seems to be targeting the casual moviegoer, right? Like, look at Ghostbusters.
Yeah. I don't even want to see it.
I didn't see it, but I mean, we all know about it, right?
Yeah.
And that's that's kind of where I'm inclined to say that it's more vandalism than anything else, because it takes well-established properties and it warps them for its own purposes with its own message.
Yeah, I mean, to a point, I mean, I guess it is. My first statement, I didn't really think about pre-established works, but yeah, like, I'm not against, basically, I don't know. Like, I guess at the certain point when it becomes propaganda is just whenever I complain. I don't know, like, it's a difficult area to traverse because you don't want to totally prevent feminists from getting their feelings out, even if you disagree with it. You don't want to start suppressing people. But I mean, my question is, though, and I think this is a decent question, what, like, even if everybody unanimously agreed that it was, vandalism. What would you do about it? Is there anything that can be done about it?
Well, one thing that's been happening with Marvel, for example, is people are voting with their wallet. Marvel had to cancel a lot of its SJW titles
That's
because
true.
they weren't making any money at all. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think the two biggest keys, like if you honestly do believe that it is vandalism, and I'll just play my hand here, right? Like I do think it's vandalism, but if you honestly think that it is vandalism, um, then the two things you ought to be doing are, one, educating people, right? Letting them know, like, hey,
Right.
they are subtly messing with the stuff that you love. Don't stand by and let it happen. And then two, vote with your wallet, right? The best thing we can do to save the things that we like is to make the pervasive messages irrelevant or obscure.
Okay. Well, here's a hypothetical. What if they hijacked something, but they didn't incorporate it, the messages in a blunt, manner? Like, what if it was just like a character happens to be a feminist in this thing?
I would not call that. I don't think I would call that vandalism, unless that character happens to be like the only character who knows what they're doing.
That's true.
And is an obviously head and shoulders above everybody else. That kind of situation. I
Kind
think
of like
that,
Xavier X, for example.
like what?
Like if it was Xavier X, for instance.
Right. Well, I was thinking of Rey from Star Wars, to be honest.
Still haven't seen the new movie yet.
Yeah, you're not missing much, man. I mean, like I love Star Wars almost to a fault, and I do not like Disney Star Wars.
Well, yeah. The thing is, I guess the other thing I would say is, another question anyway, is, would it be better to have like the thing you love be destroyed than to let it go to that?
I honestly think, yeah, like I would honestly rather, like, we'll take Star Wars for example, because to give you some context, right? Like, I was your typical nerdy kid in school, had a hard time socially, didn't get along with anybody. So like, I would have a crappy day at school, which was more days than more often than not. I would go home and I would either crack open a Star Wars novel or play a Star Wars game, or watch the movies or whatever, and like it was a feel better thing, right? Like, I would kind of forget about my problems for a little while and immerse myself in something that I knew and I didn't have to put a lot of thought into. So like, I really like Star Wars, and to be honest, like, I would rather see it go away forever than have it get vandalized like this. Like, I would rather they didn't make any more movies.
Yeah, fair. I mean, I was perfectly satisfied with episode 6 being the end of it.
Yeah, well, and it added a lot more. Like I really liked the expanded universe,
Yeah,
like, because it added a depth and a flavor to the universe. Like, I think I like the Heir to the Empire books, for example, more than I like some of the movies.
yeah. Knights of the Old Republic, the actual like original games, not the to be confused with the MMO. Were great.
Yeah.
The lore around them were amazing. I read only one of the comic books, and I was fine with it. And I don't know if you've read this, but have you read the Zahn trilogy?
Oh yes.
Yeah, like that to me, that was episode 7, 8, 9.
Yeah, for sure.
Like
And
that, like making the movies that they've done now. Like you can't. I don't feel like they can compete with that.
yeah, and that's what I
Like
was
the
saying. That
Zahn trilogy was damn near perfect.
I like the Zahn trilogy more than I like the prequels,
Fair.
and maybe even Empire Strikes Back.
Uh well, like what's sad about this is that I'm gonna get so much heat because I love Star Wars, but I prefer Episode 7 over Episode 4 and over Episode 6.
Really?
Even though I don't really have a whole high of an opinion of 7. I didn't like 6 because the Ewoks just piss me off. Like they really do. I hate them more than that guy that everybody whines about in Episode 1. The what's his name? Jar Jar. I actually liked Jar Jar. I still actually like Jar Jar. All right,
Be bold. Be bold.
but but the Ewoks to me are intolerable. Like I would seriously go there and just kick them all in the face, like just for fun.
You
Like
you will like this. When I DM the old D20 Star Wars role playing game, because my friends and I don't want to buy into the new ones.
yeah.
I do not let my players play Ewoks.
And what's sad is, as much as I hate Ewoks, I would probably be tempted to play as one.
Just for kicks, right?
Just to ruin the stereotypical Ewok. Just to make it like an evil Sith-esque Ewok. Like instead of this weird cute thing. And I would make him like an evil like emo. Actually, I would make it emo, like where it cuts itself.
Ewok.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I'm going to argue right now, and I don't know if you've thought about this, but this might make people mad. Not only do I actually like Jar Jar, I will argue that in the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy, that Jar Jar is the single most important character in both.
I can see that. Why don't you expand on that though? We're waking up my baby, and so I'm going to get her dinner ready.
Okay.
Let the audience know why you think that. I'll be back in just a minute.
Yeah. So pretty much, Jar Jar, was, as most people probably know, was saved by the Jedi and all that stuff, and he's a weak-minded, ignorant fool. So, and then in Episode 2, he suddenly became like I believe a senator, and was still, mostly ignorant but calmer. And then he was just retarded enough to be useful to Sidious, whom used him for the Order 66. And, or no, sorry, he used Jar Jar to allow the Sidious special emergency powers. And without those special emergency powers, everything else that followed couldn't have happened. So Jar Jar, as much of a doofus as he may have been, and as much as people may hate him, without him, it would have been more difficult for the Emperor to actually become the Emperor. And the Emperor being necessary, of course, he needed to be the Emperor for episodes 4, 5, and 6 to actually matter. And, yeah. So I guess while we wait on the old man to get back, hmm. Actually, I'm gonna see if I can answer anybody's questions. If anybody is actually watching, asking any questions. And I apologize to anybody watching this and asking questions about the slowness of this because I am actually using a stupid phone. Okay. So Metal Master seems to be the only one commenting so far. So you have any questions or anything, Metal Minister? If you're still watching.
All right, sorry about that delay, ladies and gentlemen. We just had a baby last week, and she was getting fussy, so I had to get the bottle ready. But
Yeah.
anywho,
I was going to answer questions, but the Metal Minister didn't say anything.
yeah, he's telling me he's at work. Yeah, he's at work right now, so he really can't type live. He's just got us on in the background.
Well, working is for tools.
I agree, which is why I said to do nothing but.
If only we lived in communist society and just, or not communist, but socialist, and could just get everything for free, and it would be great, right?
That would be so awesome.
And I just drop stuff on the floor.
Do you follow diversity in comics at all on YouTube?
I'm actually not a big comic book guy, so no.
I follow him basically just to keep up because he's really deep into the comics controversy with where like social justice themes have overwhelmed a lot of mainstream Marvel titles and to a certain extent DC. So he's been working really hard on identifying the authors and kind of pressuring them or pressuring their parent companies to either do something about these authors or, hey, you guys are going to lose a lot of money. And comic books have been really hit hard lately. But he was saying something interesting today. There was one of the main writers, female writers at Marvel, and she snapped, or I can't remember if it was her Twitter or her Instagram, but she said, it was women of Marvel, and proud to be part of this fantastic group, or something to that extent. And he said, it honestly reminded him of a sitcom from the mid '90s, where like there's only it's all it's all women, and they all look alike, and they all act alike, and you only see like 2 or 3 different faces in a crowd of like 20. And like and you look at how things are going right now, right, with like with Star Trek or Star Wars or comic books or whatever, right? I mean, it is very much the case where like these brands and these franchises have become exactly that.
Well, sorry, I'm not saying much right now. I'm trying to, I'm multitasking between getting my kid to sit on the potty at the moment. Take me like a second. So I not say anything. So,
It's
and we live out in the country, so we got to keep the water running. So
right.
I got to mute it so you're not hearing white noise. But yeah, just keep going on about this comic guy. I'm actually interested in hearing more about that.
So yeah, his main point was that, like all the writers, they all look alike. And for people who supposedly pride themselves so highly on diversity, they sure don't exhibit a lot within their own ranks. And when you try to get like a quote unquote diverse staff, right? Like they're all postmodernist hipsters of color. There isn't there is no diversity among them. Like you take a look at the last shot of Return of the Jedi, right? It has the main cast. You've got Princess Leia, a female, Luke and Han, the two robots, Lando, a black man. And this is in the early 80s. Like this was your main cast. Like Star Wars doesn't need to be diversified. It's already diversified. Right? Same with Star Trek. I mean, the original crew, Captain Kirk's crew, was like groundbreaking. Height of the Cold War, right? They have a Russian shooting their ship's guns. They have an Asian man flying the ship, a black woman, right? You've got Janice Rand, a regular kind of supporting actor, right? These titles don't need to be modified in the name of social justice or in the name of feminism, right? They're already what they need to be. I mean, hell, Star Trek had the first on-screen lesbian kiss in TV history.
Well, I mean, to my mind, it's one of those debates of, are you going to allow for equality of opportunity or equality of outcome? I think is the way to put it. And the thing is whenever you start, being inclusive, as they put it, what you're actually doing is legitimately racist or sexist if it has to do with genders. Like, I can't use this guy because he's not Chinese. We need a Chinese guy, not this white guy. We need this black guy over here for this part. Why? Is he really good at acting? No. It's not that at all. It's because he's black. We need to show that we're inclusive. It doesn't. Like, I mean, if the script itself explicitly gives a good reason, and it's fitting for the character. See, like by the way, I write scripts like for myself. Like I plan at some point in the future actually making movies, actually, to point to fact. And then, like, when I write a script, I don't have like the race of the person figured out. It doesn't even come to mind because I don't care. Like, to me, that's not an important factor. So what I care about is how good the acting is and how good my script is. So if I get the script finished and then I decide to go to the next stage, which would be casting, I let how good they are at the part determine what race the character is going to be. I don't care about representation other than of my own art.
And okay, and that is another thing, right? Like I'm not butthurt because people who think differently than me are watching or are writing
wrong.
my stuff. Yeah, like I'm not butthurt about that. In fact, if they did a good job of it, I would be all for it. But the problem is, like, this new stuff is just awful, right? Like, Star Trek Discovery is awful. The Last Jedi is terrible, right? Most of the Marvel titles are awful. Baldur's Gate Deluxe Edition was Garbage. The female
Oh my
Ghostbusters.
god,
Garbage.
dude, that was devastating to me. Is the Baldur's Gate thing, because
Oh, I know.
that's my childhood being dicked with.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Like, it's not that you have tried to insert your message into things that I like, because I can put up with a lot of things I disagree with. Case in point, like my favorite TV show right now is The Magicians. And I mean, I'm about as a normie moral fag as you can get. And The Magicians is like straight up degeneracy. But I like it because it works. It doesn't feel forced. And it's a damn good story. Right? But like
Yeah.
what we've got now is just awful. Like those characters in Baldur's Gate were the most ham-fisted characters I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah.
And that's why I call it vandalization, right? Because you've inserted yourself into my happy childhood memories, and you are really bad at what you do.
Did you hear about what happened with it was one of the lead designers of actually, I'm gonna look this up because I don't want to paraphrase here. Last thing we want to do is start misrepresenting people. But she you've heard about like what they did with Mass Effect Andromeda.
I did not hear about that. I never really followed Mass Effect.
Oh yeah, no, I'm a huge Mass Effect guy, because it just blends like all of my favorite things together. Like like it blends, has a little bit of Farscape, has a little bit of Stargate, and has a little bit of Star Wars and Star Trek. Like it's kind of just all blended into this perfect almost blend for like the original trilogy. A lot of people hated the third one, but I liked it. So, and then they made a sequel nobody asked for, and it just they made the women ugly on purpose. Not even kidding. Like it was just weird. Like the women were intentionally unattractive, and whatever. And it received some flack. And one of the designers, I do believe it was one of the designers or one of the PR teams, one of the two, kind of came out and basically chewed out the gaming community for not being, if I remember correctly, again, tolerant or inclusive enough. I'm trying to find this quote. I see. My problem is I don't save all this stuff. I need to start doing that. But yeah, I'm not finding it. But effectively, the woman was basically, full sexist or something to that effect, or not politically correct or whatever. I'll probably come back to that in a bit as soon as I find it. But yeah, they did that, and then there was there was other things. It was just weird pandering. Like keeping in mind that BioWare being the same company that made Baldur's Gate. All right.
Yep.
They got bought out by EA, and almost all the staff was completely replaced by EA. Like, because they either quit or got full-blown fired, and so now they have a safe space in BioWare. And it's just because they did the same thing to Dragon Age Inquisition. Like, I've played Dragon Age Inquisition. I was excited to play it because I liked Dragon Age Origins, hated number 2, and I thought that Inquisition was a decent enough middle ground between the two that I thought I would like it. And it had some interesting things about it that I did like. However, I started noticing the pandering to feminism and how a couple female characters in there were blatantly feminists. And then my favorite part is Morrigan, which is hands down one of the sexiest characters in all of video games. I know a lot of people my age when Origins came out that probably jizzed all over their TV screen over this chick. Voice acted by Claudia Black. You know who Claudia Black is?
Yeah.
Yeah, like she just is perfect. And But how she wore her clothes was very revealing. Like she had this weird shirt that only covered her pretty much her nipples, and everything else was just like there, which fit also her character and the whole theme of her character and everything. It just fit. She was a changeling. She could change into different animals. Well, if you can change different animals, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, you're not going to want to wear like really tight clothes. You're going to wear really loose things, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, like but then they made Inquisition, brought her back, and she's no longer revealing at all. Like they just like made her dress more conservatively, and there's nothing sexy about her. They actually made her uglier. Like they actually neutered the character and made her boobs smaller.
Well, they did that to Laura Croft too.
They did, yeah.
God, I think I just dated myself on that one, right?
You what?
I think I just dated myself by referencing Laura Croft.
Well, same here. Like I remember when I was a kid too, and I had the 64 or a 64 PlayStation, and you know, and it was all like, "Oh my god!"
Yep. Mom's not going to like this.
Well, the funny thing is I had this weird attraction to boobs before I even knew what sex was. Like, keep in mind, I was a late bloomer. I didn't know what that was at all until I was like 15. So, like, nothing. Awesome. I knew nothing. Huh?
That's funny.
Bible Belt.
Yeah, that's true. So I guess then we can definitely agree then that we don't mind exposing ourselves or consuming intellectual properties that disagree with us, even on a fundamental level, so long as it's good. But when you take something over and you make it bad,
yeah,
you're basically dead at that point.
Yeah, I mean, like, you have to understand, like with a lot of the things that I enjoy. I mean, they did that to me too. Like a lot of what's sad is these people don't think about something else too. Like, so okay, you got taking something over, right? Like totally taking over the intellectual property, but then there's another element, like just straight up making a sequel to something or a prequel, I guess. And in the same universe, you know, with maybe even some of the same characters or maybe none of the same characters, at a more propaganda-esque feminist, pro-feminist or pro-SJW anything game or movie or whatever, what have you. And the problem with that is a lot of these people don't realize when you do that, you're actually neutering also everything else that came before or after it. Like, so if it was already like in Mass Effect, there's already 3 games. None of them, like, I mean, they kind of brought in the homosexual thing, right? Who cares? Like, they kind of somewhat shoved that in your face, but in the 3rd one, but I mean, like, you can ignore it. Like, you can just, like, you don't have to actually talk to that individual. But they never, like, shoved it in your face. They didn't make women ugly. Or any of that crap. And happening was then they made Andromeda, and I'm just like, you're ruining the rest of the game series that I enjoy. You are putting a bug stain on what would otherwise be a near, you know, perfect, or, well, I mean, at least in my opinion, near perfect experience. Because now when I go back through and play all that again, I'm just going to think, yeah, but then there's this one. Like same thing with Fallout. Like, although they didn't feminize it, but Fallout 4, I just hate it. Like, so like now when I go back and play the other ones, I'm like, yeah, but I mean, there's the sequel. Like, and I'll never really get to complete the series because I'll never enjoy that last thing.
Yeah, it's really tragic, right? Like there are so many things that I wanted to like I should be really happy right now. I mean, it's super nerd time, but on the other hand, it is also wrong.
Do what? I didn't hear that. I didn't hear the question.
It's super nerd time, right? Like we should be happy right now. I mean, our stuff is in the mainstream, right? But it's like it's become so
Yeah,
awful.
yeah, it is. It's a weird culture war, and like, who would have thought 30 years ago one of the bulk elements of a culture war would be fought over video games or movies or board games or what have you, things that were thought to be evil just in the 90s.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
some of those.
Like I spent
Like
enough time
so like
convincing everybody that I wasn't worshiping Satan because I enjoyed Dungeons and Dragons. Now I have to
yeah.
convince everybody that I'm not a Nazi because I play Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. Like, or even worse, you have to convince them that you're not a feminist.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm because it's getting to a point where they automatically think you are.
Isn't it funny too how like the social justice movement really sounds exactly like um the like the satanic panic from the 80s and 90s, right? Like
Yeah.
don't listen to Iron Maiden or play Dungeons and Dragons or Magic because you're going to go to hell. And now it's secular equivalent, right? Like don't
Yeah.
listen to heavy metal, don't read comic books, don't play video games because you're going to become a racist or a sexist.
Well, you know what's the worst part about this is they think they're the majority, and they're not. There is no evidence to support that they're the majority. I mean, like for instance, you know, you said earlier, like that Marvel like had to stop all that crap because people stopped paying them,
Yeah.
and they were losing money. Or even in the case of Andromeda, Mass Effect Andromeda is dead now. Like they dropped all DLC. It bombed. It flopped. Like and I mean, and they're never going to do it, support it any further, other than maybe some updates tops, and that's even doubtful. So I mean, like everything that they have touched, like everything, like and if they hadn't immediately, they just do gradually over time, just slowly destroying everything that they touch, because nobody, like, they fail to understand that most people are normies. Most people, quite frankly, don't give a shit. They don't care. Like, this is the most annoying thing to me. Like, if I go to my grandmother right now and be like, "Oh man, there's all these people on Twitter, and they're arguing over harassment, and like it's not even harassment; it's just a bunch of gossip." You know, she just like immediately look at me and say either "What's Twitter?" and then "Who cares?" Like,
Yeah.
like nobody cares. The only people that care are either the SJWs pushing an agenda and the people who are afraid of it actually becoming the majority and are fighting against it. Like, that's the only people that care. Like, that's it.
Well, and I think that's the thing too, where like I work two jobs and I have six kids, right? My life is
Jealous, actually. I want 6 kids.
it's stressful drudgery in many regards. And when I come home, right, and I've had a long day at work, right, and I want to log on to Twitter, or I want to go play a game or whatever, or I want to log on to Daily MTG and read about the new set that's coming out. I don't want to get lectured about how I'm a horrible person because I'm a dude, right?
Yeah.
I've had a long day. My kids hate me by the end of the day. My boss hates me by the end of the day. And I'm pretty sure my wife hates me by the end of the day. I don't want my hobbies to hate me either.
Right.
And I think that's the thing that's going to really tip tip it over the edge, like with the NFL, right? Americans, like they don't want to hear about how they're horrible people because they're white. On Sunday afternoon, when they want to turn on their beer, they want to come home after church, open their beer, turn on the TV, and watch the Dallas Cowboys run over whoever they're going to run over this week. I don't even know if the Cowboys were
Right.
good this year, because I hate football.
Either.
Outside of my hometown team, I can't stand football. So, but it's neither here nor there, right?
Right.
Nobody cares. No one cares about your nonsense. So stop pushing it. Stop pushing it. Stop throwing it in our face. We don't care. I want my weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even get it. Like, the only thing that I can see as a reason, and this is kind of, I'm going to be drifting in a bit of a tinfoil hat thing, but here for a second. But the only reason I can come up with that they would target those hobbies, and media and all that, like entertainment, is because it is in fact something somebody does in their pastime. However, like things like like what you'll find is nerds predominantly, tend to act, if tend to do things that are, like a lot of them tend to be more likely to like maybe become a scientist or take a STEM field, things that require more intelligence, like go to college and actually learn something, and maybe be part of a STEM field or whatever, right? And so, like, if you're targeting it, like indoctrinating them in a way, young, while they're because the people who aren't interested in games or any of that, or comic books or whatever, like, come on, like they're more likely to just join the military.
I actually joined the military. That's the funny part.
I know a few as well, but outside of you, but I mean, I don't think video games is the best example, but I mean, like the super nerdy things like D&D or Magic.
Yeah.
Like those type of things. Like, I tend to see people that do that be more interested in more intelligent fields, even if they don't get a job there. But the thing is, if you're affecting those in their pastime, you can creep into their you can make it part of their ideology. So then you have a person, you end up having a kid who is really heavily interested in, let's say, rocket science, right? And then like they have this ideology that's just been stuck in their head ever since they started reading this specific comic book, and it's convinced them to have this ideology. So they become they become a rocket scientist, and then you have freaking science SJWs, which to my mind is instantly a problem, but and then let's not say rocket scientists, politicians. Like, you have this one that just becomes interested in politics because of this, like, and goes to college and all that stuff, and then now you have a politician that has this ideology, and that ideology is always gonna come before. If you have to choose between your ideology or this thing, most cases they're gonna choose their ideology. Anything that may contradict it. And that's the same is true for nationalism. Like, people who are hardcore patriots, they're going to choose their own country, to be patriotic of their own country, literally over anything that may contradict that. Like, because like countries thrive on this. Like, this is how a country even succeeds, is by convincing its populace to be patriotic, which is an ideology. It's the same thing with having SJWs. Like, it's the same logic. ideologies need to spread, in order to exist. Now, the only other thing I came up with as a more feasible and slightly less tinfoil hat thing is that maybe they're targeting nerds because nerds are socially awkward, like
That's
and
my guess.
easy to convince and all that stuff, and irrelevant as to whether or not they take a STEM field or what have you. Or irrelevant of how intelligent they may or may not be. You have a kid that's socially awkward that is more likely to associate with people within his own area of influence, his own interest, and be more likely to convince other people of his peers whom are equally as socially awkward as he.
Well, why do you
And
think Chris Sprinkle got into magic, right? I mean, it is if you make a living dressing up as characters, right? Like, I can't think, even within gamers, like, gaming has become so mainstream now. Your Letterman senior quarterback who's banging the prom queen on weekends is still going to come home, fire up the Xbox, and play Call of Duty after he gets home from school, right?
Right.
That's how ubiquitous video games have become. But stuff like Magic and D&D, right? Like, these are still some of the most socially awkward people I know. And so what do you do, right? It's the big fish in a small pond sort of thing, right? Like, holy crap, here's a girl, and she actually kind of looks good. Yeah, she's got some crazy ideas, but dude, it's a girl. And then somebody's like, oh no, like, her ideas are actually total crap. And she starts to say, oh, everybody's so mean to me, and everybody's, so the whole group rolls over and says, oh, no, you got to stop talking to her like that, man. Right. And I think that's kind of what happened to Magic the Gathering.
What's sad is I've been to a bar one time in my life. So to say, like, I will say that it is starting to bleed into normie land. And I've been into one bar, and I've heard, but it's weird is so I saw this happen, and I thought this was just like a fluke, but I have heard so many people, like even Jeremy, say this about his bar he goes to. It's just weird, and I've heard this so much even from women. Men nowadays are so ostracized for being sexual that, like, they don't talk to the women. Like, they don't even talk. Like, and it's weird because, like, I like, keep in mind, I went on a date to this bar for the first time not that long ago. All right. Now, granted, I wasn't in there to talk to other women or to get a hookup or anything, but I still talked to other women, even on that date. Like, although those women, of course, were friends with my date, and it was a weird thing. But the point is, I didn't have an issue. I don't have an issue talking with women. Anytime I'm in public, I never had an issue. But I've seen this over and over where, like, all these boys, realistically, I'm not even talking about, I shouldn't say boys, but like, like soy boys, like these betas. Like I see so many of them just so unwilling to actually speak. Like, one, and I'm not even fucking kidding, was sitting there staring at my date. Like, just literally just staring off and zoning out on her.
Ooh.
Like, and I'm just sitting there like, why don't you just come over here and talk to her? Right? I mean, like, naturally, I didn't necessarily want him to, but I mean, like, there's all these women. Actually, the bar was filled with mostly women. Like, and nobody, I've never saw one guy actually, other than the bartender, talk to any of them.
Huh.
It's just so weird. Like, and I see this often in other places. Like, like whenever I go, I'm hanging around my friends at a festival, like, they don't talk to girls. They just don't. I'll walk right up to them and tell them I have a micro penis. Like, I don't even care. Like, I have no issue. I treat them like I treat guys. Actually.
Isn't that what they wanted,
like,
in the first place?
Yeah. It is. And honestly, most women aren't feminists. Like,
That's
this is the funniest thing. Like, you can just go and grab the majority of women by the ass, as long as you're, of course, not doing it like a total stranger and it's socially acceptable in that particular moment.
or you're
But you
Donald
can,
Trump.
in it, right? Or if you're Donald Trump, and you can get away with it in most cases. But I even have a friend, a best friend that I've had for years, right? He's told me, he said that he told me this. He's not, keep in mind, he's not an SJW. He's literally a normie. That's all he is. Straight up told me that even if a woman smacks you on the butt, you should not ever do it back. Even if she puts herself in a position for you to do it back.
Oof. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm just like, ugh.
That is the weird thing, right? Where we wanted to be one of the guys or be treated no different than the guys, but then as soon as it starts happening, anger.
Yeah, it's just so. I mean, like, and how this relates, going back to the nerds and all that. Nerds are, like, oddly enough, like, for some reason, all of them, from what I've seen, again, like, I mean, I'm a nerd myself, so I mean, whatever. But a large portion of the ones I've seen on the internet or in person or what have you are extremely socially awkward. Some of them overcompensate for just, like, by acting like a narcissist, and
Like
which is
Desolator
always
Magic.
funny. Right? Yeah, but he's autistic. He's got a lot on his table, on his
That's
plate.
true.
Have to compensate. But the thing is, though, is I see all this and I'm like, it's like today we can't just chill out anymore. Like,
Yeah.
nobody, like, the feminists have got the men put in a position to where, like the awkward men, where they feel superior for having this ideology, like they're a part of something, But at the same time, like, they can't ever get laid without being ostracized, or even talk without being ostracized, and it's counterproductive. You want that, like, to me, that is true. That's like vandalism of nature, and this comes back to your original question, I guess, is that you're asked if the pre-established works are vandalism, affecting, messing with those, is that vandalism. It's like, not only is it vandalism, not only is it propaganda, but it is extremely damaging to society if utilized in the way they continue to seem to be utilizing it. Like, propaganda is not good. It can dismantle entire countries from the bottom up.
I was thinking that we've been running for an hour and 15 minutes, and I was trying to think of a closing statement, but you nailed it, man. That was
Sorry.
perfect. No, that was perfect. You summed up in that last couple sentences. You summed up everything that I was trying to. That is what I wanted. The message that I wanted to convey tonight. So my hat is off to you.
Sorry, I just got here. Can we start again?
Oh. What's up, man? How are you?
Oh, not bad. How you doing?
Good. Yeah, we were really deep into it. We were trying. I told you what the topic was going to be, right?
Yes. Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Well, we each kind of talked our own piece on this. Did you have any ideas on this? Like, so you take like a movie like, or you take like Star Trek, right? Star Trek Discovery, and you rewrite the whole franchise with some very obvious social justice, or at least third wave feminist ideals. Is that progress or is that vandalism?
Both.
Both.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. Like, this is you could end on this too, or if you guys want to reply, whatever, that's fine. But just going off of a news statement there as well, is that the idea is that there is a toxic wave of feminism that I think we all kind of recognize. That we talk about, you see inside the media, you see how it kind of plays out And it's true, it is there. And I think that the problem with that is it obscures the actual message that there is, a certain culture out there that does uh, that does put women at a disadvantage. There is. There's also the same culture as being, on a pendulum that switches back and puts men at a disadvantage on other areas as well. But, one of the problems with the feminist movement is that they try to ignore all those. It's not about equality, it's about superiority. And we can't be happy with the middle ground. And the middle ground is the place where we should be landing on this. And so when you take a look at like these the problem is that it's overcompensated in certain areas. So, for example, like one of the problems that people always have is kind of like this like overly masculine kind of macho attitude. The caveman hit a woman over the head, drag her back to your cave type thing, the masculine superiority, or like the old school movie, like the man aggressively grabs the girl and kisses her and stuff like that. These things, depending on the context that they're in, can be good, can be bad. But the problem is that they demonize this instead of painting a picture of context for when things like this can be done or how to read people or any of this other stuff. They demonize these entire actions, and what they end up doing is from this is demonizing certain aspects of masculinity. Is that men can't be aggressive anymore, men can't be upfront, men can't be assertive about their own sexuality. Men have to placate to the woman and let them control everything, which is not the best way to go. So when you see like how like this kind of flows over into society, it's like, yeah, you know what? If we want to get rid of like some of the bad social norms, like the idea that the men has to be in control or the men has to be the aggressive person in a relationship, yeah, we should write that out of the mainstream media, because the reason why we think this in the first place is our exposure to it throughout the last 50, 60, 70 years of Hollywood or movies and novels putting this in their mind that this is what a man has to do to attract a woman. But we have to find that middle ground, and the middle ground isn't destroying all of masculinity. It's finding that that balance in there. And so going back to the question about like Star Wars there, when you put the feminist ideologies out there, yeah, it is progressive to change the attitude of culture, as long as you don't change it too far in the opposite direction, which, you end up in a situation I knew was talking about there, where you go to a bar and you literally see men that don't necessarily recognize as feminists or anything like that, but men that are terrified now to engage in the opposite sex because they don't know what they're supposed to do anymore. And that's the confusion that we're in right now, is that we don't know. Men don't know how to be men anymore. Men don't know how to attract women. Men don't, what's the proper way to do it? The way that I met my wife, 11, 12 years ago, if it was to happen nowadays, probably be sexual harassment, probably be sexually assault. We were both shit-faced at a bar. And by today's standards, who knows how that would have played out.
That's classic, though.
Good, clean fun.
Actually, you kind of just summed up the entirety of what we've discussed this whole time.
Boom. Yes.
I believe, right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think I liked how you touched on the pendulum thing too, where there definitely needed to be a shift from like the old kind of Humphrey Bogart, Cary Grant sort of thing, right? Like that you'd see in all those classic noir films, or even what is it? I can never remember the name of the movie. It's like North by Northwest, I think, is what it is. With
you had Cary Grant. Cary Grant.
What's that?
Said you had me at Cary Grant.
Right. Yeah. Like look no further. Right. But there was definitely a bit of a paradigm shift needed, and I'm all for that. Right. And I have no issues with, breaking the glass ceiling, as it were. But when you erect another glass ceiling underneath it to prevent, to ensure that nobody else follows, that's where we start to have an issue. Am I right? Of course I'm right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like a video I just saw the other day. Actually, it was well, you're probably gonna. I don't know if you'll agree with this or not. But anyway, it was a video 2525. I don't know if you've heard of him, but I would advise you check out his stuff. He's a cartoonist, and his videos are pretty entertaining, and while also providing valid points. But one of the things he said is you do not solve Islamic terrorism by replacing it with Christian doctrine. And the reason why is because it doesn't really do anything. You're just replacing the problem with another problem. And the reason he was saying that wasn't because, he was being anti-Christian in that particular video, but rather I think most would agree that Christianity's been declawed. It's not like what it was during the Middle Ages, right? So removing its competition and just replacing Islam with it would give it its claws back, would give it back the power it had, or actually more power than it ever had, and and that would be a problem. So, the whole basic point here is you don't just replace an ideology with an ideology. You don't replace alt-right with alt-left. It doesn't sound like it's logically feasible, because any extreme, like you have a pole, and being on either side of it, neither side is correct. The pole, you can only reach it through all sides kind of meeting in the middle, meeting at the pole.
But there is no meeting in the middle, because there's no acknowledgement of the other person's position. Like you see these discussions that there is, like, from an alt left perspective, there is no alt right. Like there is no meeting in the mission, because they're just wrong. Because to say that for them that there can be some common ground in the middle is to be like, hey, maybe we should just sit down with Nazis and find out, what their grievances are, because that's what they feel in their mind. And then from the right, it's the same thing. It's just like, well, why do we have to sit down with these leftists? I mean, it's like sitting down and negotiating with the communists, and they paint them in the most negative light out there. That there can be no possibility to middle ground. So what happens is all the people that aren't in that position, which is the vast majority of people, the vast majority of people don't recognize as extreme left or extreme right. They're centrist in some way. Even the ones like I'm a traditional conservative, but I'm in the middle compared to some of the views that people have. And what ends up happening is that the discussion can't be had, and you just get this confusion, this vacuum in the middle where you don't want to associate with anybody, and it just it's almost like a complete apathy to either position now.
Well, but you see, like, what I meant by meeting in the middle was more on the lines of people forgoing their previously held beliefs and attempting to whittle down the extremes of their views by, in a way, acknowledging the probability that they could be largely or entirely incorrect, and basically my whole idea relies on intellectual honesty. And I get that inherently, whenever you have somebody on the extreme left or the extreme right, the likelihood of them being intellectually honest is pretty minimal. I get that. But my whole point is essentially that's what would have to be necessary. People would have to forgo their ego and the beliefs that they have to actually reach a conclusion that isn't necessarily on either side of the fence.
Well, people will stick to whatever their ideology is until they realize that their ideology doesn't benefit them anymore. And you remember that whole, I can't remember how it goes, Jim. You probably remember this better than I. But everybody is a Democrat until they're like 20, and then they become conservatives. Or I can't remember. How does it go? Yeah. You guys ever hear that saying before?
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah, you're a Democrat till you're 25, and then everybody's a conservative after that. Because as soon as you start taking a vested interest in things like what your taxes are paying for and what you're contributing, then you become a little bit more fiscally reserved with the money that you're giving to the government. And but nowadays, I think that one of the problems is that the lines between, especially political views, have become so blurred that that it's very hard to tell, except outside of maybe a few talking point policies, where the actual separation is anymore. So because of that, you don't see that switch back and forth anymore. That's that responsible attitude that comes in later on. You just have people in this hot mess in the middle.
Yeah. Well, I guess if I think about it a little bit more, I guess it would be technically impossible without some mediator in the middle. It wouldn't make it any more likely per se, but yeah, you had two different people arguing, because me personally, I am mostly a centrist, but I only slightly lean to conservative, and this is primarily because of my stance on guns. That's pretty much the only major conservative view that I have, that I can think of anyway. I'm pretty sure. But the point is in order for to show somebody that it's no longer working for them, you have to show them the facts. The only issue with this, of course, is you could retort this with basically just saying, well, if they're that far on the right or the left, they're just not going to accept the facts because they don't conform with their previously held ideology. Because ideologies ultimately work on a confirmation bias MO. But, we could wipe them out. That would fix it. Just impale them. It
always comes back to the impaling, doesn't it?
And Jim, there's one more thing. How do you? Because I know you've been following this, and it is kind of the geek cast type thing. How do you feel about what appears to be the conclusion of Jeremy's crusade right now?
I'm a lot happier with bringing my kids to events. That's definitely a good thing. For those of you that don't know, Magic the Gathering had this big issue where they found that a lot of the judges for big mainstream tournaments had prior convictions for sex crimes involving minors, and that just kicked off this whole huge brouhaha. So Unsleeved Media, aka MTG headquarters, led this almost month-long crusade to institute background checks for judges and methods to protect minors at events. And finally, Wizards of the Coast released a statement saying, yeah, this is no good. They summarily banned anybody who had a record, and then said, yeah, if you're going to run a major event, you have to you have to have a background check on all your judges. They need to be cleared to work with kids. And that makes me very happy. They still need to unban him because it's crap. But, at least where it stands right now, I got to watch a video where he's cracking packs, and I don't have to worry about the judges diddling my kids. So,
I think the thing that was was terrible, the whole thing, it was that he got banned first off for, holding a contrary opinion to what, I guess... Again, this goes back to what I was just saying, where there is no middle ground to negotiate, because you don't even have to acknowledge that there is another position. They're automatically wrong by default, and he held apparently the position that was wrong by default, and therefore that was worthy of a ban. Nothing to do with the game itself or any play or anything like that, but he was banned from events for that. And so he starts off this crusade by basically saying, it's okay, great, if we're going to make the level of tolerance for what constitutes a ban this low, well, let's see what else is in anybody else's closet, because I'm pretty sure every single person has done things just as atrocious, in quotation marks, as he has. And then what he finds out is that, well, he got banned for posting Pepe memes and holding a position about what cosplayers do. People that were, convicted child sex offenders were not only just, in the community itself without a ban, but in some cases were judges. And that's fine, and that, everything came in now, and it's great if you're in this position of authority that's, supervising these events that are attended by children. Yeah, you should have a criminal record check to show that you're actually allowed to be around children in the first place, which wasn't being enforced. That's great. But I mean, to the same token now, like, okay, the judges program's done, but how many Magic players now? How many other people out there have, skeletons in the closet? And those are the people that still aren't, that will never get a ban. There's no mandatory background check or anything like that for any other, for just being a Magic player. But so now does this mean that, and some of these guys were banned, they were banned not just from being judged, but from playing Magic as well. But so if somebody comes out now and they find out that, this guy has a history of sexual offenses against a minor, and then what, you just email Wizards of the Coast and then that person will never allowed to be play Magic in an organized event again? Like, is that's what it is now?
I think so. I mean, at least that's what it ought to be, right? I mean, they obviously ought to investigate just to make sure that everybody gets their due process, because like otherwise, I get salty, I lose a tournament, and I say, hey, yeah, my opponent has been diddling kids in his spare time.
Well,
yeah, I mean, and I get that. I guess I'm happy that this happened, and I'm happy that they put this program in place. I am a little bit weary of like the consequence from this now, where it's like that you can still be because nothing's happened. To really improve upon it. How do I say this? It's like they've Wizards of the Coast set a standard when they banned Jeremy for something as ridiculous as that. He basically said, okay, Wizards of the Coast asked for this. Let's get everybody else banned for something as ridiculous as that. And instead of them recanting on their policy now of saying, okay, well, maybe we should only hand out bans for people that do, stupid things that involve the Magic, playing Magic itself at these organized events. Instead, what they did is now they're like, okay, fine. You're right. We pushed it back this far. So we are going to start enforcing this on absolutely everything out there. So it's like, in the end, well, I'm happy that this happened, and I'm happy that this policy got put in place. Nothing's actually been happened to actually address the issue of somebody being able to get banned for stuff that happens outside of the game, which was the main reason they brought it up in the first place.
Well, I mean, look, in my view, with that actually is it's literally, for one, just one victory at a time. And the other thing is, hey, first off, and if you want me to, I can go back through. I can do that. Actually, while I'm talking, I'll do that. In the community guidelines, it does not say that. Now, granted, it doesn't mean they can't, ignore their own community guidelines. But the fact of the matter is in there that there's no provision for things like Twitter. They're only for things that apply to or are moderated specifically by WotC. And the thing is them doing that with Jeremy was a bit of an overreach. It took their guidelines and quite literally just threw them away. Like I don't even know how to fully articulate it other than that. It's just profoundly absurd that you can be banned for things that they wrote in their community guidelines that actually do not apply to the medium in which the offense was done.
No, I know it's in fact, it's complete bullshit. But it's like, And that's what I'm saying is that it's um, all he did was he's like, okay, listen, I got banned for this thing that you consider was a grievous offense, but apparently this isn't as bad as this other problem that I exposed. So what's the next thing? He's like, okay, well, we got rid of the big one. So now, let's go through and find every single, player or judge that has a history of assault, because obviously assault now would be just as grievous as, posting dangerous memes on Twitter. Okay, so then after that, every single person that's got, has a history of assault gets banned. It's like, okay, well, that's good, but is that still really on par with posting dangerous memes? I don't think so. So let's go through now and find every single person that made an insulting comment on Facebook, or whatever, and then let's actually keep on working down until we get to this level where we actually are on par with what Jeremy did, and then there's nobody left playing the game anymore.
Yeah.
What should have happened was, was that they just recant on Jeremy's ban and banning people for thought crimes and things like that, and instead, think about what actually constitutes a ban in their game, instead of just setting such a stupid standard like this, because now it's not actually concluded. This actually needs to keep on going until we get to the point where every single person that's committed an act as grievous, again in quotations, as Jeremy did, should be banned, which is every single person that plays that game.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I don't think true equity in this game will be achieved until Patrick Chapin receives a lifetime ban. And if you guys don't know who Patrick Chapin is, he was the player. They call him the innovator because he showed up on the pro scene with this really awesome deck that nobody had ever really heard of before. And while he was on the tour, when he tried to go to Japan, he got busted for kilos of, I think it was ecstasy. And he did a stint in federal prison for it. And Japan says, don't come back. Ever. And after he got out of prison, he came back again and made a huge splash in the pro scene and ended up coming in second at Worlds. Won Journey into Nick's Pro Tour. And now he's one of the biggest content creators for Magic. He is such an established player. He could just show up to a Grand Prix, or get himself into a Pro Tour berth with little effort, without having to grind it out for the season, right? That's how established of a player he is.
Well,
but anyway, I have to go, so I'm just going to finish off on this point here, and that is that, yes, I'm glad that he won this one, but it's actually not over. In order for this to actually get to the point that we recognize just the ridiculousn's of policing thought crimes, is we have to take they have to ban every other person that's led up to this as well, and every other crime that that is worse than that. And then after that, then you can say that they're actually truly consistent with how they police their community. But it's ridiculous.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. On that one, Jim, thanks for the invite. Sorry I couldn't stay around more, but I'm out with the kids. We'll talk to you guys later.
That's all right, man. You have a good one.
Well, he came out. Oh, is that it?
Yeah.
He came in at the perfect time.
He did. And that's usually how it goes too, right? Stefan will usually show up a little late, drop these truth bombs, and then make his exit. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in. I want to thank my guest panelists, Anu, Vlad, and Stefan, even though he's not here to acknowledge that. Do you want to plug your channel real quick?
Yeah, sure. I have a channel on the YouTube, and Anu Vlad, and I just it's called Anu Vlad, and I just kind of yell at people for talking about miscellaneous nonsense while hypocritically doing so myself. So that's pretty much the gist of it. And I have a Twitter if you want to check that out with the same name. Should be the only Anu Vlad in both.
Fair enough. And I do actually, on my personal account, I do subscribe to him. If if you enjoyed the video, please crush that thumbs up button. The obligatory like and subscribe comments at the end of the video. I thank you very much for watching, and we don't have any Twitter presence. We have a Facebook page. I don't know how well it's maintained because I don't have a Facebook account. That usually falls to Metalhead Sam or Seamus. And I'm not sure what the status of that page is. Gonna have to look into that. I am on Twitter at uninformed_313. I do share all the Geekcast videos, and you can reach out to me there. You can drop a comment on the page. I do try to read every comment and at least acknowledge them, whether it's with a thumbs up or by actually responding. Like I said, thanks again for watching, and I'm the old man signing off.